Motorola spent the entire year designing a phone and forgot to upgrade it. Same processor, same cameras, same screen. But after a week against the Z Flip 7, the Razr does one thing so well, it almost makes up for everything Motorola got wrong. Hey, I'm Olive, your host here at Versus.com. Let's get into it. Both phones look surprisingly similar and share almost the same dimensions, but the Motorola has rounder edges that make it much easier to flip open. Still, compared to last year's model, the design is virtually identical. Both feature aluminium frames, but Motorola uses titanium to reinforce its hinge. For the back, the Galaxy uses Gorilla Glass Victus 2, whereas Motorola takes a more unique approach with either Alcantara or real wood, like the one we have here. Motorola has actually been using real wood since the 2013 Moto X. You'll find fingerprint scanners on the power buttons for both, so you can unlock them even when they're closed. The Motorola is the heavier of the two at 6.9 ounces, but that's still lighter than an iPhone 17, for example. Both of these flips are IP48 rated, so while water shouldn't be an issue, tiny particles like sand can cause serious damage. So as always, let's check in with the team and see who likes which design best.
The Razr.
The Galaxy. The Motorola.
The Galaxy.
The Galaxy. What about you?
I'm also gonna have to go for the Galaxy. So the outside is basically identical, but once you flip them open, that's where one of these phones starts to pull ahead. For the inner displays, we're looking at 7 and 6.9 inch panels, respectively. Both are LTPO AMOLED, though the Razr supports up to 165 Hz compared to the 120 on the Galaxy. In our high brightness test with simulated sunlight, both sat around the 1500 nits mark, but for peak brightness, the Galaxy reached almost 3000 nits. As for the cover screens, both reached around the same high brightness as the foldable displays, which should be more than enough for outdoor use. You can pause the video right here for all the display specs. So overall, there are no massive novelties on Motorola's side. We do get the brand new Gorilla Glass Ceramic 3 on the cover display and a slightly brighter inner panel, but the Galaxy still takes the crown for overall brightness. That said, the Motorola should still give you a better overall experience thanks to higher resolution, a faster refresh rate, and Dolby Vision support. That's the screens, but one of these phones has a sound problem you won't catch in the specs. We've got an audio sample for you, but keep in mind that recorded speaker audio never sounds quite the same as it does in person.
Said I need a meal, no less, bruh. I ain't seen it yet, so I might go request you. They been taking shots, need your best now. Seen them all talking with their chest out. Too much going, got them stressed now. And they see me winning, told them why you so upset now.
Personally, we do prefer the Motorola's punchier bass and generally louder volume output. That said, even though the Galaxy is a bit quieter, it does offer slightly better clarity for vocals. Now, let's talk cameras, because the spec sheet says they're basically the same, but the photos tell a completely different story. We have 50 megapixel main cameras on both phones with very similar specs. However, a novelty on the Razr is low-fig, a sensor tech we first saw on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra that should improve dynamic range. Starting with the main camera, the first thing you'll notice is that the Motorola tends to produce warmer photos, while the Galaxy leans more toward cooler tones. The Motorola can also slightly overexpose some shots, whereas the Galaxy handles dynamic range a bit better. When it comes to ultra-wide shots, both perform adequately, but the Galaxy tends to deliver more accurate colors and better dynamic range control. The Motorola, on the other hand, can push the contrast a bit too far, which sometimes causes it to lose detail. You won't find dedicated telephoto lenses on either of these, so basically all zoom is digital. Here the Galaxy caps out at 10 times zoom, and honestly, neither phone looks amazing, but the Galaxy does produce clearer results, especially with things like text and texture. It can zoom in further, but at 20 times, things get even messier, and at its maximum 30 times zoom, the image is not exactly usable. Portrait mode is tricky for both devices since neither one really perfects it. That said, the Motorola does have an edge when it comes to subject separation, usually creating a more natural blur between the subject and the background. However, as you can see here, it completely blurred out the leaf in the shot, which is a pretty big fail. When it comes to video, on the main cameras, the Galaxy goes with 8K resolution at 30 FPS, while the Razr taps out at 4K 60 FPS. However, for our comparisons, we always film at 4K 30 FPS. A video is unfortunately not a strong point for either device. For some reason, both tend to overexpose the scene, with the Motorola being especially extreme to the point where it can completely ruin the footage. Only the Galaxy offers portrait video with this same main sensor, though only at 1080p 30 FPS resolution. So if you do want that more cinematic looking background blur in your videos, Samsung is your only option. As for ultra-wide video, both phones top out at 4K 60 FPS. And as you can see in this example, when the lighting changes, the Galaxy adjusts its color processing in a strange way, making my skin tone look noticeably off. It almost feels like the Motorola performs better in less sunny environments, while the Galaxy starts to struggle more in the shade. The selfie cameras on these bendy boys are a third 50 megapixel sensor on the Razr and a 10 megapixel shooter on the Galaxy. Neither phone fully nails the colors here, however, the Galaxy does a better job controlling highlights and shadows. The Motorola, on the other hand, pushes contrast too hard, which adds a noticeable cast to my face. On top of that, it once again overexposes the background. In low light, each phone takes a completely different approach. The Galaxy instantly kicks into night mode and gives you a much brighter image, though it's not especially sharp. The Razr looks more natural and closer to real life, but it's simply too dark for a selfie, so you'd probably want to use the flash here. As for video with these cameras, we also have a maximum format of 4K at 60 FPS. The Razr wins when it comes to autofocus, since you can stand further from the camera and still remain sharp. However, when it comes to overall video quality, Samsung is clearly ahead.
So now let's test out the audio on both of these devices, and we'll start off over here with the Razr. What do you guys think? How do I sound? Then we're moving on to the Galaxy. Does it sound any better than the Razr? What are your thoughts? As always, let's talk about it.
So, as you just heard, there's virtually no difference in audio quality. Both perform adequately, but background noise can easily creep in since noise cancellation is basically non-existent. In a busier environment, things could get messy pretty quickly. Now let's check out some low-light shots. Starting with the main camera, both images look very similar at first, but on closer inspection, the Galaxy delivers more accurate colors, while the Motorola actually handles dynamic range better, as you can see on our pink flamingo friend. In ultra-wide shots, the Moto's white balance is still clearly off. On top of that, the image looks slightly blurry and overly smoothed, while the Galaxy handles the scene better overall. Portraits are generally one of the Razr's strengths, since the Galaxy tends to create a harsh border around the subject that looks very artificial. And while Samsung does handle dynamic range better, it also adds a strange texture to my skin, which is not ideal. When it comes to main camera video, this was a very challenging dark scene, so naturally both devices struggled. However, the Galaxy managed the exposure on the subject better, while the Moto produced a lot more noise, especially on my face. It's the same story with the ultra-wide camera. Neither looks great, but the Galaxy handles exposure better, while the Razr has a more natural low-light look. So this one does come down to personal preference. However, in extremely dark conditions, keep in mind that Samsung is the only one that gives you any real visibility. One of the biggest perks of flip phones is that you can use the main cameras for superior selfies. Also, while both phones feature a camcorder mode, the Razr lets you zoom in and out by tilting the device. Finally, frame match on the Moto ensures you always get the framing you want when asking someone else to take a photo of you. Now, the cameras are one thing, but what's happening inside these phones is where the story gets weird, because one of them has a thermal issue that completely changes the conversation. As for memory, we are looking at 16 gigabytes on the Razr and 12 on the Galaxy. Here's a quick breakdown of available storage configurations, types, and USB standards. But to really see what these phones can do, we ran some real-world tests starting with 15-minute gaming sessions. In Grid Legends, using graphics mode, we had basically the same experience on both devices. Both held their frame rates nicely, though you can see the Moto ran a bit hotter than the Galaxy. In Wuthering Waves at maximum graphics, we saw less stable results on both. However, the Moto held up slightly better in terms of both FPS and temperature, though the margin wasn't huge. As for demanding productivity tasks, we exported 99 photos in Lightroom, and the Razr once again took the lead with a 3-minute advantage over the Galaxy. For video rendering, we exported a 1-minute 4K 30 FPS video in CapCut, and the Motorola winning streak continued, finishing quicker than Samsung's foldable. Of course, we also also ran benchmarks like Geekbench 6, which further proved that Motorola made the right call sticking with that powerful chipset. Though there was something strange going on, because in 3D Mark, the Moto instantly throttled, delivering extremely low scores compared to almost any other 8 Elite phone on the market. This is certainly due to overheating, as 3D Mark kept crashing repeatedly due to high temperatures. In Antutu, both went through like champs. This time, the Razr redeemed itself, scoring a full 1 million more points than the Galaxy. Finally, we ran the CPDT benchmark to measure storage speeds, and both phones were in roughly the same ballpark, with the only major difference being the slightly faster memory copy speeds on the Moto. So while the Razr does outperform the Galaxy, thermal management is extremely poor in this kind of form factor, and that Snapdragon chipset is to blame. Flip phones are not designed to be super powerful flagships, so we think Samsung putting an Exynos chipset in the Flip 7 is indeed a smarter move for efficiency. But software is where Motorola scores a huge win, but also a huge loss. Paradoxical, right? Both Motorola's Hello UI and Samsung's One UI 8 are built on Android 16. However, Motorola still has a pretty lackluster support window, only 3 years of OS updates and 4 years of security patches, which really pales in comparison to Samsung's 7-year commitment. Despite the lacking long-term support, Motorola still does cover screens much better than Samsung. And this right here is the one thing I told you about at the start, the thing that almost makes up for everything else. While it is true that you can personalize both with fun video wallpapers and widgets, Motorola gives you full app support right out of the box. You can even play Wuthering Waves right here if you want. The Galaxy's cover screen is primarily designed for widgets. You can run some full apps, but the selection is extremely limited. Now, to be fair, you can run any app you want, but you have to dig through the menus to enable the feature in Labs, something most casual users just won't bother with. Aside from the cover screens, you get Circle to Search and Gemini on both, plus desktop interfaces when connected to a display. Motorola also includes its own Moto AI backed by Perplexity, even featuring a dedicated button on the left. The Galaxy comes with Galaxy AI, which also offers a long list of features, including really impressive image generation. In terms of the UI, Motorola stays closer to Shock AOSP, while One UI on the Galaxy has its own colorful aesthetic. Oh, and it can also do this.
Hello, Moto.
So Motorola wins on the cover screen, but all of that goes out the window if the price doesn't make sense. And spoiler, it really doesn't. To test real-world endurance, we calibrated both screens to 500 nits and turned off all battery-saving features. The Galaxy called it quits first at the 10-hour mark, while the Razr lasted almost 11 hours. To bring them back to the land of the living, we used a 100-watt charger. The Motorola reached a full charge in just 41 minutes, reaching 46 watts, while the Galaxy took almost double the time at 1 hour and 18 minutes, peaking at 23 watts. So, the Motorola Razr Ultra 2026 is indeed a great phone, even if it does run a little hot under pressure. We don't know in what world Motorola's marketing strategy actually works, because in ours, it definitely doesn't. You can currently find the 2025 model for only $799 in Motorola's own store, which makes this year's model feel pretty much dead on arrival, unless that wood finish is worth an extra $700 to you. The Galaxy Z Flip 7 is the smarter buy if you're choosing just between these two. It's plenty powerful, and if you're willing to tinker with the settings, you can get almost the same cover screen handling as with the Motorola. The Galaxy originally retailed for $1,099, though you can currently find it for around $899. That's a staggering $600 difference, though once again, last year's Moto is still the better deal overall. If you want to see how the 2025 Motorola holds up against this Galaxy, check out our full review right here. Also, in case you want exclusive access to videos and perks, go ahead and press that join button. Here's a special shout out to our latest Ultra members, Ali, Downlight, Julian, Roller Track, and Brendan. Oh, and before you go rewatch Shrek 2, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and hit subscribe, because we're always testing the latest tech to help you make the best choice. We'll see you in our next video, and until then, take care.